The stars had been quiet for a long time. The galaxy had its rhythm, its rules, and its silence. Every species that had grown old enough to travel between stars had learned the same lesson: do not disturb the order. The Galactic Council had been watching over this order for more than 10,000 years. They were proud of it. They believed they had built something perfect. And for a while, it seemed like they were right. Then the signal came. It started as a small pulse at the edge of the neutral zone, a region of empty space that no species was allowed to claim. Monitoring stations picked it up first. Then relay networks carried it deeper into the core systems. Within minutes, every major species in the galaxy knew something was happening. Something big. Admiral Yun Teho stood on the bridge of the HSS Horizon, the flagship of the human Starfleet. He was a tall man, with a calm face and steady eyes. His uniform was dark blue, simple, and without decoration, except for a small silver pin on his chest. He had served in the fleet for 30 years. He had seen battles, storms, and the cold silence of deep space. But today was different. Today he was about to do something no human had ever done before. "Fleet status," Teho said quietly. "All ships in formation, Admiral," replied Lieutenant No Yuna from her station. She was young, barely 26, but she was one of the sharpest officers in the fleet. Her fingers moved quickly across the console. 412 vessels, all systems green. We are holding position at the edge of the neutral zone. Teho nodded slowly. 412 ships. It was everything they had. The entire human Starfleet gathered in one place for the first time in history. Cruisers, carriers, medical ships, engineering vessels, and supply transports. They stretched across the dark sky like a line of silver lights. He looked at the main screen. Ahead of them was nothing but empty space. Behind them was Earth, far away but still pulling at his heart. He had promised his daughter he would come home. He intended to keep that promise. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council," Yuna said. Her voice was steady, but Teho could see the tension in her shoulders. "Put it through." The screen changed. A face appeared, or something close to a face. It belonged to Speaker Dolvan, a high-ranking member of the Council. Dolvan's skin was pale silver, and his 3 eyes blinked slowly as he studied Teho through the screen. His voice came through smooth and cold. "Admiral Teho, the Galactic Council has observed the movement of your fleet. You are approaching the neutral zone with a military force. This is a violation of the Accord of Silence. You are ordered to withdraw immediately." Teho did not blink. He did not move. He simply looked at the screen for a long moment. "Speaker Dolvan," he said, his voice low and even, "we received a distress signal from Velith Prime 6 days ago. Their star is dying. A solar flare will hit their planet within 40 hours. 9 billion people will be burned alive." Dolvan's 3 eyes narrowed slightly. "We are aware of the situation on Velith Prime." "Then you know they are asking for help." "The Council has reviewed the matter," Dolvan said carefully. "Velith Prime is located within a contested zone. Sending military or civilian ships into that area would disturb the balance between several member species. The Council has decided that intervention is not possible at this time." He let the silence sit between them like a stone. "Not possible," he repeated. "That is correct. 9 billion people. The Council understands the gravity of the situation, Admiral, but we must consider the larger." "I understand," Teho said, cutting him off. His voice did not rise. It did not shake. It was simply final. "Thank you for your time, Speaker." The screen went dark. The bridge was silent. Every officer on the deck had heard the conversation. Every one of them knew what it meant. The Council had said no. The galaxy's oldest and most powerful organization had looked at a dying world and decided it was not worth the trouble. Teho turned to Yuna. Open a channel to the entire fleet. Yuna hesitated for only a second. Then she pressed the button. Channel open, sir. Tejo straightened his back. He looked out at the stars. Then he spoke. This is Admiral Yun Tejo. 6 days ago, Velith Prime sent a distress signal. They are facing extinction. Their star is going to kill them, and no one in this galaxy has answered their call. The Galactic Council has told us to turn around. They have told us to go home. He paused. I am not going home, not yet. We are going to Velith Prime. We are going to save as many people as we can. This will not be easy. Some of us may not come back. But I did not build this fleet to sit in the dark while the universe burns. He took a slow breath. If anyone wishes to turn back, you are free to do so. No one will think less of you. But if you choose to stay, then follow me. The channel closed. The bridge was still. Yuna looked at her console. The data was coming in. Ship after ship was reporting in. Not a single vessel had broken formation. Not one. She looked up at Tejo. All ships holding, Admiral. No one is leaving. It lasted only a second. Set course for Velith Prime, he said. Maximum speed. The fleet moved as one. 412 ships turned together toward the dying star. Their engines burned bright against the black. The light they made was visible on 1,000 sensor screens across the galaxy. Every species watched. Every council member watched. Every empire, republic, and federation saw the human fleet move forward into the dark. And not one of them understood why. The humans were young. They had only been traveling among the stars for 200 years. Their technology was not the best. Their ships were not the fastest. Their weapons were not the strongest. By every measure the galaxy used, they were small and unimportant. But they were moving, and the rest of the galaxy was standing still. Tejo looked at the stars ahead. Velith Prime was 32 hours away at full speed. 32 hours to reach a world that had been abandoned by everyone who should have helped. He did not feel anger. He felt something deeper than that, something quiet and heavy in his chest. He felt duty, and he was not going to let it go. The fleet cut through space like a blade through water. 412 ships moving in perfect formation, their engines glowing blue against the endless dark. Inside every vessel, men and women worked without rest. There was no time for rest. Velith Prime was dying, and the clock had already started. Fleet Commander Han Jisoo stood in the war room of the HSS Horizon, surrounded by holographic displays. She was a woman of 43, with short dark hair, and a face that never seemed to show emotion unless she wanted it to. She had spent her entire adult life in the fleet, rising through the ranks, not because she was loud or aggressive, but because she was smart. She could see problems before they arrived. And right now, she could see 100 of them. "Show me Velith Prime," she said. The hologram shifted. A planet appeared in the center of the room. It was blue and green, beautiful in a way that reminded Jisoo of Earth. But next to it was its star, swollen, red, and angry. Data streams floated around the image. Temperature readings, radiation levels, time estimates. "The solar flare will hit in approximately 29 hours, said Lieutenant Park Unji, the fleet's chief science officer. She was a quiet woman with glasses and steady hands. "The flare will carry enough energy to strip the planet's atmosphere in less than 3 minutes. After that, the surface temperature will rise to over 2,000 degrees. Jisoo studied the numbers. "How many people on the planet?" 9.2 billion, Unji replied. "The Velith are a peaceful species. They have basic space travel, but nothing capable of mass evacuation. Their ships can carry maybe 50,000 people total." 50,000 out of 9 billion, Jisoo said softly. The numbers sat in the room like a weight. "Yes, Commander." Jisoo closed her eyes for a moment. "What is our carrying capacity?" Unji pulled up another display. "If we use every available ship, cargo bays, hangars, corridors, medical bays. We can fit roughly 60 million people. 60 million, Jisoo repeated. That is our absolute maximum. It will be uncomfortable. People will be standing in hallways, but it is possible. 60 million. It was a huge number by any normal measure, but against 9 billion, it was a drop of water in an ocean. Jisoo knew this. Every officer in the room knew this. They could not save everyone. They could not even save most of them, but they could save some, and some was better than none. Then that is what we will do, Jisoo said. Her voice was firm. Begin organizing the fleet into 3 groups. Group 1 will handle evacuation. I want the largest transport ships and carriers in this group. Group 2 will handle planetary shielding. We need to buy time for the evacuation. Group 3 will be support, medical ships, supply vessels, and engineering teams. The officers moved immediately. Orders went out across the fleet. Ships began shifting formation, rearranging themselves into the 3 groups. It was like watching a living thing change shape. Jisoo turned to her communications officer, Sergeant Cho Minho. He was a broad-shouldered man with a kind face and a calm voice that could cut through any amount of chaos. Minho, open a channel to Velith Prime. I want to speak with whoever is in charge down there. Minho worked the controls. Channel open, Commander. You are connected to the Velith Emergency Council. The hologram flickered, and a new face appeared. It was a Velith, a tall being with soft blue skin, wide dark eyes, and thin fingers that trembled slightly. The fear on its face was clear, even across species. I am Elder Sorvan, it said, its voice shaking. You are the humans? I am Fleet Commander Han Jisoo of the human Starfleet, she replied. We received your distress signal. We are coming to help. Sorvan's eyes widened. For a moment, he could not speak. His thin hands came together in front of his chest. You came, he whispered. We sent the signal to everyone, to every species we could reach. The Council said no. The Empire said no. We thought we were alone. You are not alone, Jisoo said simply. Sorvan closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. How many can you take? Jisoo did not look away from his eyes. She owed him the truth. 60 million. That is our maximum. The silence that followed was heavy. Sorvan's face changed. Hope and grief mixed together in his expression, fighting each other. 60 million was a miracle and a tragedy at the same time. 60 million, he repeated quietly, out of 9 billion. I know it is not enough, but we will not leave until our ships are full, and we will do everything we can to shield your planet while we work. We may be able to buy you more time. Sorvan nodded slowly. Then we must begin choosing who will go. Those words hung in the air. Choosing. It meant deciding who would live and who would stay behind. It was the hardest decision any leader could ever face. Elder Sorvan, Jisoo said gently, we will be there in less than 20 hours. Please begin preparing your people. Children first, then families, then anyone else we can fit. Children first, Sorvan repeated. He seemed to find some comfort in that. A rule, a place to start. Yes, we will prepare. The channel closed. Jisoo stood alone in the war room for a long moment. The hologram of Velith Prime still floated in front of her, spinning slowly. She reached out and touched the image. Her fingers passed through the light. Minho watched her from his station. Commander, are you all right? No, she said honestly, but that does not matter right now. She turned to face the room. Get me Admiral Tejo. We need to talk about the shield plan. Minutes later, Tejo joined her in the war room. He looked tired. The weight of command was showing on his face, but his eyes were still sharp. The shielding, Jisoo began, pulling up the technical data. Unji's team has run the numbers. If we position our ships in a grid pattern between the star and the planet, we can use our deflector arrays to create a temporary energy barrier. It will not stop the flare completely, but it could reduce the impact enough to give us extra time. How much extra time? Taeho asked. Maybe 6 to 8 hours, but there is a cost. Jisoo paused. The ships in the shielding group will take massive damage. Some of them will not survive. Taeho was quiet for a long time. How many ships in the shielding group? 120. And how many crews on those ships? Approximately 38,000 people. The number settled between them. 38,000 human lives, standing between a dying star and a dying world. They will need to volunteer, Taeho said. They already have, Jisoo replied. I sent out the request an hour ago. Every single ship assigned to the shielding group confirmed within 10 minutes. Full crews. No one asked to transfer. Taeho looked at her. Something passed across his face. Not surprise, but something deeper. Pride, maybe, or sorrow. It was hard to tell. Then we move forward, he said. Jisoo nodded. We move forward. Across the fleet, preparations continued through the night. Engineers checked systems. Pilots ran simulations. Medical teams prepared for mass casualties. In the cargo bays of transport ships, crews cleared every piece of equipment they could move to make room for passengers. And somewhere in the dark, Velith Prime turned slowly beneath its dying star, waiting for the humans who had answered when no one else would. The fleet arrived at Velith Prime with less than 18 hours left on the clock. The dying star filled the sky, enormous and red, pulsing with a slow and terrible light. Every sensor on every ship screamed with warnings. Radiation levels were already climbing. The star was getting ready to kill everything around it, and it did not care who was watching. Captain Ko Mirai stood on the bridge of the HSS Dawnbreaker, the lead ship of the evacuation group. She was 35 years old, with sharp eyes and hands that never shook no matter how bad things got. She had grown up on a farm outside of Busan, and she had joined the fleet because she wanted to see the stars. Now she was looking at one that was about to explode, and she had a job to do. Take us into low orbit, she ordered. All evacuation ships, follow my lead. Begin landing operations as soon as we are in position. The ships moved down through the atmosphere of Velith Prime. The sky below them was full of smoke and dust. The heat from the star had already begun to crack the surface in some areas. Rivers were drying up. Forests were burning. And everywhere, there were people. The Velith were waiting in massive groups, on open fields, in city squares, on landing platforms that had been cleared of everything that was not a living body. Millions of them stood together in the heat, holding their children, carrying nothing. They had been told to bring nothing. There was no room. Mirai watched the first transport ships land. The doors opened, and the Velith began to move. They walked in lines, quiet and orderly, guided by human soldiers and Velith volunteers. There was no panic. There was no shouting. The people of this world had accepted what was happening with a dignity that made Mirai's chest ache. First wave is loading, reported Sergeant Yoon Hana from the ground team. She was standing on the surface, her uniform already soaked with sweat from the heat. Around her, human soldiers were carrying Velith children in their arms, lifting the elderly, helping the injured. We have capacity for 12,000 per ship. Loading time is approximately 40 minutes per cycle. Too slow, Mirai said. She did the math in her head. 40 minutes per cycle, 230 transport ships. Even running non-stop, they would barely reach 40 million before time ran out. Cut the loading time, she said. Open every door on every ship. Use cargo ramps, emergency exits, maintenance hatches, anything. Get people inside however you can. Hana did not question the order. Understood, Captain. On the ground, the operation shifted. Human crews opened every possible entrance to their ships. Velith civilians climbed through cargo doors, walked up maintenance ramps, and squeezed through side hatches. Children were passed hand over hand from the ground into the ships. Human soldiers formed chains, lifting people up to higher entrances where the ground was too uneven for ramps. Mireille watched the numbers on her screen. The count was rising. 10,000, 50,000, 200,000, 1 million, but the clock was falling faster. Meanwhile, in orbit above the planet, the shielding group was taking position. 120 ships arranged themselves in a wide grid between Velith Prime and its star. Fleet Commander Han Jisoo commanded the operation from the horizon, watching the formation take shape on her display. All shielding vessels in position, reported Unji. Deflector arrays are powered and linked. The energy barrier is forming. Jisoo looked at the readings. The barrier was thin, far thinner than she would have liked. It was like holding a sheet of paper against a fire. But it was something. No matter what happens, hold it. The star pulsed. A wave of radiation washed over the barrier, and the ships shook. Alarms rang on every bridge. Hull temperatures spiked. But the barrier held. The radiation that reached the planet was reduced by nearly 60%. It was enough, for now. Down on the surface, the evacuation continued. Mireille had moved the Dawnbreaker to the planet's largest city, where the population was densest. The streets were full of Velith, all moving toward the landing zones. Human ground teams had set up lights and speakers to guide them. The voice of Sergeant Hana echoed across the city, calm and clear, directing people to the nearest ships. Mireille noticed something that made her stop. A Velith mother was standing at the edge of the loading zone, holding 2 children. She was not moving toward the ship. She was pushing her children forward, but she was stepping back. "Hana," Mireille said over the radio, "the woman at Zone 7. Why is she not boarding?" There was a pause. Then Hana's voice came back, quieter than before. "She says her children were selected. She was not. The Elders' Council is prioritizing children and young families. Parents who are not selected are staying behind." Mireille felt something break inside her chest. She gripped the edge of her console until her knuckles turned white. "Get her on the ship," Mireille said. "Captain, the loading priority. Get her on the ship, Hana. We will make room." There was a moment of silence. Then Hana's voice came back. "Yes, Captain." Mireille watched on the screen as Hana walked over to the woman, took her hand, and led her onto the ship with her children. The woman was crying. Her children were holding her legs. A human soldier picked up one of the children and carried him inside. Across the planet, scenes like this were happening everywhere. Human soldiers carrying Velith children on their backs. Engineers giving up their own bunks so that families could stay together. Pilots sitting on the floor of their own cockpits so that one more person could fit in the seat. The numbers kept climbing. 5 million, 10 million, 20 million. The ships were filling up beyond their listed capacity. People were standing in hallways, sitting in engine rooms, lying on the floors of cargo bays. The air systems were working at maximum. The life support was straining. But no one stopped. Mireille received a report from the medical ship HSS Mercy. "Captain, we have converted every operating room and recovery bay into passenger space. We are carrying 42,000 people. Our rated capacity is 6,000. "Can you hold?" Mireille asked. "We can hold." By the 12th hour of the evacuation, the count had reached 38 million. Ships were making multiple trips, flying up to orbit, transferring passengers to larger carriers waiting above, and then diving back down to the surface for more. Mireille had not slept. She had not eaten. She stood on the bridge and watched the numbers, and every number was a life. Every number was someone's mother, someone's child, someone's friend. The star pulsed again, harder this time. The shielding ships shook violently. 3 vessels reported critical hull damage. One ship, the HSS Ironwall, lost power to its deflector array. The gap in the barrier let a burst of radiation through, and the temperature on the surface spiked by 8 degrees in 3 seconds. "Close the gap," Jisoo ordered from the horizon. 2 ships moved to cover the hull. The barrier stabilized, but the message was clear. Time was running out. Mireille looked at the clock. 6 hours left. Maybe less. The star was getting angrier. She opened a channel to every evacuation ship on the surface. This is Captain Mireille. We have 6 hours. I want every ship loaded to absolute maximum. If you can fit one more person, you fit one more person. No one leaves with empty space. No one. On the ground, the pace increased. Lines moved faster. Ships loaded in 20 minutes instead of 40. Human crews worked until their hands bled and their legs gave out, and then they kept working. A young Velith girl, no more than 5 years old, walked up to Sergeant Hannah at Zone 7. She was alone. She was holding a small cloth toy in her hands. She looked up at Hannah with wide, dark eyes and said something in her language. Hannah knelt down. She did not understand the words, but she understood the look. She picked up the girl, held her against her chest, and carried her onto the ship. The galaxy was still watching. Every sensor network, every intelligence agency, every government in the known universe had their eyes on Velith Prime. They watched the humans work. They watched them bleed and cry and refuse to stop. And still, not one of them came to help. The star was screaming. That was the only word for it. Every instrument on every ship was filled with noise. Radiation spikes, magnetic surges, heat waves rolling off the dying sun in pulses that shook the fleet to its bones. The shielding group had been holding position for 14 hours, and the damage was beyond anything they had planned for. Engineer Beck Doha stood in the engine room of the HSS Stonewall, one of the ships in the shielding group. He was 29 years old. He had dark circles under his eyes and grease on his hands that would not come off, no matter how many times he washed them. He had been working without a break since the fleet arrived. His team of 12 engineers had kept the Stonewall's deflector array running through conditions that should have shut it down hours ago. Core temperature is at 93%, said his assistant, Shin Bo-young. She was leaning against the wall, her face pale and her breathing heavy. The heat inside the engine room was unbearable. The cooling systems had failed 2 hours ago. If it hits 100, the reactor will shut down automatically. We will lose our section of the barrier. Doha wiped the sweat from his face. He looked at the reactor, a massive column of light and energy that hummed with so much power he could feel it in his teeth. If this reactor went down, the barrier would have a gap. Radiation would pour through. The surface temperature on Velith Prime would spike. People would die. People who are standing in line right now, waiting to be saved. How long until the next solar pulse? He asked. Bo-young checked her screen. 37 minutes, and the science team says this one will be the biggest yet. It might be the one. The killing blow. The moment the star finally released the flare that would end Velith Prime. Everything they had been doing, the shielding, the evacuating, the bleeding and sweating and praying, all of it was building to this moment. Doha closed his eyes. He thought about his mother in Daegu. He thought about the small restaurant she ran, the one with the blue door, and the smell of soup that filled the street every morning. He thought about the last thing she had said to him before he left for the fleet. Be careful, Doha. Come home. He opened his eyes. Bo-young, I need you to listen to me, he said. His voice was calm, calmer than it should have been. There is a way to boost the deflector output by 400%, but it requires removing the safety limits on the reactor core. If you remove the safety limits, the core will overload within minutes. I know. The ship will be destroyed. I know that too. Doha, if this ship goes down with the safety limits on, the barrier breaks, and millions of people die on the surface. If I remove the limits, the deflector will put out enough energy to cover not just our section, but 3 sections around us. It will hold the barrier together through the flare. He paused. It is math, Bo-young. Simple math. Bo-young's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head slowly. It is not just math. No, Doha agreed quietly. It is not. He picked up his radio. Captain Song, this is Engineer Beck Doha in the engine room. The captain's voice came back immediately. Go ahead, Doha. Sir, I have a plan to amplify the deflector output. It will hold the barrier through the flare, but it will cost us the ship. A long, painful silence. Is there another way? The captain asked. No, sir. Another pause. How long do we have to evacuate the crew? If we start now, about 20 minutes. The core will hold that long. Begin evacuation of all non-essential personnel immediately, the captain said. His voice cracked at the edges, but held together. Doha, you stay on the line. Yes, sir. The evacuation of the Stonewall began. Crew members moved through the corridors, some running, some walking with the slow weight of understanding on their shoulders. They climbed into escape pods and shuttlecraft. They left behind their stations, their rooms, their personal things. Some of them looked back. Most of them did not. Boyoung refused to leave. I am staying with you, she said. No, Doha said firmly. You have a family. So do you. Boyoung, please. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and put her arms around him. She held him tight. He could feel her shaking. Then she let go, turned around, and walked out of the engine room without looking back. Doha stood alone. The engine room was quiet now, just him and the reactor and the hum of the ship. He walked to the main console and began entering the override codes. His fingers moved steadily. No trembling. No hesitation. Core safety limits disengaged, the computer announced. Warning, reactor overload will occur in approximately 18 minutes. Doha nodded to himself. He activated the deflector amplification. The ship groaned. The walls vibrated. The energy output quadrupled, and the deflector array blazed with a light so bright it was visible from the surface of Velith Prime. On the horizon, Jisoo saw the spike on her display. What is happening on the Stonewall? Unji checked the data. Her face went white. Someone has removed the core safety limits. The deflector is running at 400%. The ship will overload in. She stopped. She understood. The ship is sacrificing itself to hold the barrier. Jisoo pressed her hand against the console. She closed her eyes. Who is on board? She asked quietly. One person, Engineer Beck Doha. The name would be remembered. The solar flare came 12 minutes later. It erupted from the star like the breath of something ancient and furious. A wall of fire and radiation, wider than planets, moving at a speed that made light seem slow. It hit the barrier with a force that cracked the hull of every ship in the shielding group. Ships buckled. Shields failed. The HSS Vanguard broke apart. The HSS Iron Ridge lost half its crew when the hull melted on the starboard side. 16 more ships went dark. Their systems overloaded. Their crews fighting fires and decompression with nothing but their hands and their will. But the barrier held. The Stonewall's amplified deflector poured energy into the grid, filling every gap, covering every weakness. The ship was tearing itself apart from the inside. Metal screamed. The walls glowed red. The temperature in the engine room passed 300 degrees. Doha stood at his console. He could not feel his hands anymore. The heat was beyond pain. The light from the reactor was blinding. But he did not move. He watched the readings. The barrier was holding. The surface of Velith Prime was still intact. The evacuation ships were still flying. People were still being saved. Core overload in 60 seconds, the computer said. Doha smiled. A small, tired, peaceful smile. He thought about the blue door. A flash of white light, silent and brief, in the dark between the star and the planet. The blast pushed the barrier outward, strengthening it for just a few more seconds, enough to absorb the last of the flare. Then the light faded, and the ship was gone. On the surface, the evacuation teams felt the heat spike and then drop. The barrier had held. The flare had passed. The sky was still red and angry. but the ground beneath their feet was still there. Sergeant Hannah looked up at the sky. She did not know what had happened up there. She would learn later. Right now, she had people to save. Across the fleet, 17 ships had been destroyed. Over 4,000 crew members were dead. Dozens more ships were crippled, burning, venting atmosphere into the void. The cost was enormous. Admiral Tejo stood on the bridge of the horizon and read the casualty reports. His hands were steady. His face was stone. He read every name, every single one. "Continue the evacuation," he said. "We are not finished." And they were not. The ships that could still fly kept flying. The crews that could still work kept working. The count on the evacuation board kept rising. 45 million, 50 million, 55 million. The dying star had thrown its worst at them. The galaxy had given them nothing. And still, the humans did not stop. The last ship lifted off from Velith Prime with less than 40 minutes to spare. It was a small cargo vessel, the HSS Sparrow, never designed to carry passengers. It had 216 Velith civilians packed into its hold, sitting on the bare metal floor, pressed together shoulder to shoulder. The pilot, a young woman named Onari, flew it through a sky that was turning white with heat. The air around the ship burned. The hull groaned. Warning lights covered every inch of her console. But she flew steady and true, climbing through the fire until she broke free into the black of space. Behind her, Velith Prime began to die. The second flare came 19 minutes after the Sparrow cleared the atmosphere. It was not like the first one. The first had been a warning. This was the end. A wave of energy so vast and so violent that it swallowed the planet whole. The oceans boiled in seconds. The cities turned to ash. 9 billion voices that had not been carried away fell silent in a moment so fast that the mind could not hold it. The fleet watched. Every screen showed the same thing. A world gone. A civilization burned to nothing. Captain Ko Mireille stood on the bridge of the Dawnbreaker and watched Velith Prime disappear. Her face was wet. She did not wipe her eyes. She let the tears fall because they needed to fall. Behind her, the crew was silent. Some of them were crying too. Some of them just stared. "Final count," Mireille said, her voice rough and quiet. Lieutenant Unji answered from the horizon through the fleet channel. 58,412,907. 58 million lives, carried in the belly of human ships, fed by human food, protected by human shields, saved by human hands. It was not enough. But it was what they had. Admiral Tejo ordered the fleet to set course for the nearest safe system, a neutral station called Erevan Point, 3 days away at reduced speed. The fleet was broken. More than a third of its ships were damaged beyond normal repair. 17 were gone entirely. The rest were overloaded with passengers, running on failing systems, held together by the work of engineers who had not slept in 2 days. But they moved. Slowly, painfully, the fleet turned away from the dead star and began its long walk home. In the days that followed, the galaxy could not stop talking. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. Representatives from 47 species filled the great chamber on the station of Orvan, their voices overlapping in argument and accusation. Some demanded to know why humans had entered the neutral zone without permission. Others wanted to know why the Council had refused to act. A few simply sat in their seats and said nothing, staring at the images that played on every screen. Images of human soldiers carrying Velith children, of ships burning in the dark, of a cargo vessel flying through fire. Speaker Dolvan tried to control the session. He stood at the center of the chamber, his 3 eyes scanning the crowd. "The Council made a decision based on the Accord of Silence," he said. "We must respect the process." A representative from the Kelvari, a species known for its bluntness, stood up. The process let 9 billion people die. Dolvan opened his mouth to respond, but another voice cut through the noise. If I may. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to the entrance. Admiral Yun Teho walked in alone. He wore his uniform, dark blue and wrinkled, still carrying the dust of Velith Prime on his boots. He had not changed. He looked like a man who had been through a war, because he had. He walked to the center of the chamber and stood where no human had ever stood before. The representatives watched him with expressions that ranged from anger to curiosity to something that might have been shame. Teho looked around the room. He took his time. He met the eyes of every species that would look at him. Then he spoke. I am not here to make a speech, he said. His voice was tired but clear. I am not here to ask for your approval. I am not here to apologize. He paused. 6 days ago, Velith Prime sent a distress signal. They asked for help. They asked everyone. They asked you. He pointed at the council. And you said no. You said it was too complicated, too political, too risky. He lowered his hand. We are humans. We are young. We are small. Our ships are slow, and our technology is not impressive. You have told us this many times, and you are right. By your standards, we are nothing special. He took a breath. But we went. We went because someone was dying, and we could help. That is all. That is the whole reason. There is no strategy behind it. There is no trick. There is no hidden plan. We just believe that when someone asks for help, you help them. It is that simple. The chamber was completely silent. We lost 17 ships, Teho continued. We lost 4,231 people. Good people. People with families and dreams and lives that mattered. They are gone because they chose to stand between a dying star and a dying world. His voice dropped lower. One of them was a 29-year-old engineer named Bake Doha. He stayed behind on his ship so that the rest of his crew could escape. He removed the safety limits on his reactor to strengthen our shield. He burned alive in an engine room so that millions of people he had never met could live. He did not hesitate. He did not ask for permission. He just did it. Teho looked directly at Dolvan. You have 10,000 years of civilization. You have technology we cannot even understand. You have fleets that make ours look like toys. And when a world was dying, you held a meeting. Dolvan's 3 eyes blinked. He said nothing. Teho turned back to the full chamber. I did not come here to lecture you. I came here to tell you what happened, because you should know. 58 million Velith are alive right now because humans decided to show up. They are on our ships, eating our food, sleeping in our hallways. They are scared and they are grieving, and they have lost everything except their lives. And we will take care of them for as long as they need, because that is what you do. He straightened his back. The silver pin on his chest caught the light. You could have helped too. He turned and walked out of the chamber. The silence he left behind lasted a very long time. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. It did not change quickly, and it did not change completely, but it changed. 3 species broke from the council and offered aid to the Velith refugees. Medical supplies, food, and shelter materials arrived at Ereven Point from corners of the galaxy that had never spoken to humans before. A Kelvari warship appeared alongside the human fleet and simply fell into formation without a word. On the station, Velith children played in the corridors of human ships. They learned to say hello in Korean, and human children learned to say it in Velith. Sergeant Hana found the little girl she had carried from Zone 7. The girl's name was Lee. She still had her cloth toy. She smiled when she saw Hana, and she reached up with both hands. Hana picked her up and held her close. Captain Mireille filed her report. It was 400 pages long. She did not sleep until it was finished. When she finally lay down in her bunk, She dreamed of blue skies and green fields and a world that no longer existed. Fleet Commander Jisoo returned to Earth 3 months later. She stood on the shore of the East Sea and watched the waves come in. She thought about Velith Prime. She thought about the barrier, and the flare, and the sound of ships breaking apart. She thought about Bake Doha, who had stayed behind. She picked up a stone and threw it into the water. It skipped twice and then sank. "I will remember you," she said quietly. The wind carried her words away. Admiral Tejo went home to his daughter. She was waiting at the door when he arrived. She was 12 years old, and she had been watching the news, and she already knew everything. She ran to him and grabbed him around the waist and held on tight. "You came back," she said. "I promised," he said. He knelt down and held her. The weight that had been sitting on his chest for weeks did not go away, but it shifted. It became something he could carry. In the years that came, the galaxy would tell the story of Velith Prime in many ways. Some would say the humans were foolish. Some would say they were brave. Some would say they were reckless. Some would say they were the only ones who got it right. But the Velith, all 58 million of them, would say it differently. They would say it simply, in the way that truth is always simple. The humans came.